Webinar is now live streaming, Andy. Hey, Andy, welcome along, brother. Good to see you again for this week with Wine and Wisdom. And cheers. Well, maybe you'll be jealous. I've upgraded from the $5 bottle of wine to the, I don't know if you can see this very well.
A little bit back, mate. A little bit back.
No, the
other way. Oh, looks like a Queensland. Oh, what's that? That looks lovely.
Hill or something. Anyway, it's meant to be pretty flash. I didn't buy it, but someone gave it to me, and it's meant to be pretty flash wine, Pinot Noir, and it does taste a little bit better than the $5 bottle of wine, I can tell you. So there you go.
Yeah, that's interesting. You got the Pinot Noir up there. This one's, not sure if you can see it, is one that was actually given to my old man. It's from an old BDM or old client of his, and it's a Merrick's 2018 Pinot Noir. And I tell you what, it's an incredible little Pinot Noir from a tiny little winery down here on the Mornington Peninsula. So if you ever get a chance to check it out, it's an absolute cracker.
Mate,
very unexpected.
We'll have to get a little bit of endorsement going, but yep, good to be drinking decent wine tonight. And hey, listen, for those who are dialing in, welcome back to another Wine and Wisdom. Andy and I get to debrief the worlds that we live in, which are the world of property investing and the world of banking, share markets, and finance. In Andy's world, you know, both of us bring 20 plus years each of experience in this space, and tonight we're going to sort of wax a bit lyrical, and sometimes we get a little bit loose and get told off by Andy's mum for swearing. But hopefully we add some value to those dialing in and listening in tonight. We've got a special guest, Andy, which is kind of cool. So yeah, there we go. So it's going to be a good night.
He brought the wine.
Well, that's good. That's fantastic. So. But how do you want to roll with this tonight, mate? Let's kick off maybe a little bit around the grounds, what's been happening in the market, and then maybe we can have a bit of a chat, about other bits and pieces. So what's on the agenda for you tonight, mate? I've got I want to talk about supply. I keep saying this, I told you so type of stuff, and I think I don't mean it that way, but I was looking many months ago, over 18 months ago, about the supply chain, and it's come to fruition now. It's even made worse with this grant for real estate supply. I've had a few questions about pausing mortgages. We can talk about that. And maybe some general stuff in real estate world when it comes to these grants. So I know you had a few things on the agenda for tonight as well.
But it's in and around grants, but from a business perspective. And now wouldn't mind addressing some of the chatter that seems to be coming up from business owners in regards to, everybody really, in regards to the relaxing, the potential ending of job seeker and things of that nature. So maybe we'll also touch on a few different tax initiatives as well. And we've got some questions that we've got from you guys, and we're starting to become a little bit more formatted, even though we're just going to still wax lyrical as we normally do, because for those of you who are just joining in, this is Jason and my debrief with each other for the week, and we just chose it in a format where we can share it with you guys. So sort of share the wisdom that we have over a glass of wine, over what we've gained from the people that we work with over the week, and occasionally have a special guest in. But one other initiative that we're kicking off today is, it's everybody knows that it's tough out there in various different aspects, right? Whether it's just managing the ISO, some businesses are booming, so they're struggling to keep up. Some businesses are struggling because the doors are being closed. So what we thought we'd love to do is actually start to share some great businesses that we're associated with, and let's call it sponsored by. So love to just take you to this little bit of an advertisement, a little bit of an ad break for Jason and I.
An advertorial, hello.
An tutorial, and hopefully you guys enjoy it.
Go, Andy.
Absolutely loving tonight's Wine and Wisdom episode. I just want to say a huge thank you to the guys for, it's so good as a business owner, having all these little bits of information put in one spot, having you guys chat about it, digest it, answer questions. Absolutely loving it, and keep up the great work there, guys. What do I do with this spare time I save? For me, it is absolutely about hitting the water, refreshing, re-energizing, and trying to get away from the computer, trying to get away from just that constant thought of the business and numbers and all of that side, and basically hitting the reset button. So if you're looking for something awesome to do, a great community to get involved with, Kite Republic offer kite surfing, stand-up paddleboarding, windsurfing, foiling, pretty much anything water-based, and anything that's nice and easy to access from, especially around the Melbourne area. An awesome way to go. As I said, the community is fantastic, and you will be so much more efficient and just more stoked by the time you get back to your computer. You'll be buzzing from your sessions, and it'll save you heaps of time. We do heaps of trips, tours, all the rest. See if you can pick who this guy is from one of our tours to Atataki, Cook Islands. Who do you think? Did you get it? That was none other than the gentleman that is going to no doubt finish his bottle of wine first tonight during this chat, Mr. Andy Fenton. So, guys, if you want to join us on tour, get out there, just have more fun and have more energy to be able to put into your other things as well. Hit us up, kiterepublic.com.au. Cheers, guys. Enjoy.
I love it, mate.
Look, we thought of the initiative because it's great to support other businesses that are in the community. But personally, you know, I go away with Chris generally once a year to the Cook Islands, and it's my reset, because it's important that when you're working, you go hard and you do the best that you can at it. But it's important to have that time out, and I spend a lot of time with those guys out aboard. So that was there's a little bit more of him to come later on, and there's some actually quite cool stuff of what you can do when you do it. But anyway, Kite Republic, if you want to do any of the kiting or any of that sort of stuff, they're a great bunch of guys. You mention our name, they'll take good care of you. But so let's get to what's around the grounds, mate. There's been a huge amount in real estate recently that's just popped in.
Mate, it's been going bonkers. I think we talked about it last time we chatted about some of the grants that were coming out, or some of the boosts that the government were, hey, listen, let's throw some money at the construction industry, residential real estate. Let's see if we can't, stimulate that to see if we can get jobs and construction going. It's kind of a one-trick pony the government's been playing for, I don't know, 20 or 40 years, depending on how long you've been tracking it. But every now and then, if they want to try and stimulate the economy, they chuck some money at the home building world. Short term, it's certainly having that effect. We've had reports from builders that we work with that they have sold 85 pieces of land in 1 week, which is a record all time. These people have been in business over 35 years, and they've never sold this many pieces of land in 1 week ever in their entire lives. So, if it does come off, I think the government will land a little bit of construction activity, which will, as you and I have chatted before, that construction activity does sort of spread a bit of money out into the economy. All sorts of industries and jobs flow from construction. Certainly the residential construction world, I think that'll be good. It mostly benefits, and this is, I was chatting with some people the other day, it mostly benefits those who are getting the benefit anyway, which were the first home buyers, really. Investors don't get a look in at all. Second home buyer or upgrade home buyers get a look in. That's fine, which is cool. Free cash is always nice, or, it's not free, as someone pointed out the other day, but it certainly is not coming out of my pocket directly, maybe indirectly through debt and debt and some taxes later on. You know.
Yeah.
But mate, it's certainly having the desired effect in my world, in my space, where you know there's demand, and you know the devil's in the details in our real estate game. You know, a lot of people like to make big sweeping comments. You know, a registered piece of land that you can build on, and you know, house and land, which is sort of you know quite a staple in Australia, is a very difficult thing to supply. Most land developers will only register. So for everyone listening in, so I don't sort of leave them behind in the technical term of this stuff, a registered piece of land is that it has its own title, and then the lenders, so number one, the council can start charging you rates, and number two, the lenders can actually use the number on the title to register a mortgage on it, right? So those two things. So it's called registered land. Registered land is all land developers only have a small supply of it in advance, registered. Let me ask you, Andy, I'll chuck it out there, little pop quiz. Why would the land developers only register maybe 2 months worth of land in advance? What do you think?
You're going to have to start to pay land tax on it and additional blocks.
Well, it's close. Yes, land tax, absolutely, and also rates. And so, you know, once it's registered, once it has a title, the council will start charging the developer rates. So,
I dodged the bullet.
You've done well. You've done well. I'll put you in the hot seat. But
I was about to go. Are we on this one?
Nothing about it.
I hope you don't do it to me. But no, you did well, mate. You did well. So, you know, developers don't want to register land, like, you know, 12 months worth of registered land, because they'd be paying truckloads of expenses on that land while they are holding it, trying to sell it. So this announcement of a $25,000 builder boost for owners or builders of an owner-occupier home has caught every developer in Australia, land developer in Australia, like by the short and curly. So literally 2 months worth of supply gone on a weekend. And so, yeah, so that's pretty interesting. So, you know, for me, on the flip side of the coin, that's going to cause all sorts of things to happen. And number one thing that happens, because capitalism, unfortunately, is quite opportunistic. The land developer goes, oh, maybe I can put my prices up. Already, the average price increase in a week is $10,000, and some of them have already put their prices up $20,000. So, you know, literally 2 weeks ago, we were getting them to drop their prices $20,000 because of COVID. And on the flip side, now, boom, they're up. So anyway, that's the world of a free market when it comes to land.
Well, and let's just say that we actually picked that one a few weeks ago as well. We basically said that, you know, if you don't get in early, you miss the opportunity because the arbitrage gets priced into the market. That's a really, you know, I think that's a really important thing for us to, maybe we chat about next week.
Yeah.
Because, and for those of you who don't know, an arbitrage is basically where, let's just say that you can buy and sell and make a profit basically instantaneously, which then, and it brings the market back up to pricing. And that's what we've seen, is we've seen the government grant come in with 25 to 50,000, depending on what state you're in. And the price, the developers, or I won't say developers, people have raised their prices like that to take that opportunity cost off the table. So effectively, opportunity only really sits around for so long now, and it disappears really quick.
Well, it's the speed of that, right? You know, I've talked about this once or twice. I don't know if I've floated with you, Andy, but you know, I saw the world of real estate change in 2003 when a little company was launched called realestate.com. I don't know if you've heard of them.
Somewhere, rings a bell.
Somewhere, yeah.
Domain, isn't it? Isn't that domain?
Yeah. And for the first time ever in Australia's real estate history, realestate.com embarked on the ability for anybody at any time to pick up this device and find out what a piece of real estate is worth in under 30 seconds. And real estate never had that visibility. That was 2003. The share market had that visibility for what? How long? Like hundreds of years, maybe, or maybe not that fast, but at least 40, 50 years. You know, where there's inefficiency of data in information transfer, there becomes that arbitrage, right? So, you know, I used to find arbitrage in people not understanding and knowing about, you know, an area, a real estate area that no one knew about, and you could only find out about by visiting and buying the local newspaper. You know, that arbitrage in real estate's gone, and it's never coming back. So, you know, it's interesting when you talk about arbitrage.
That's actually a really interesting. That's a really interesting comment, conversation, because I think I only just realised it then. We're actually taking advantage of the legal arbitrage, because when you think about it, mostly when legislation gets passed, right? It gets passed covertly, doesn't it? It gets just, they pass it and then we try and dissect it. But this was so publicised and virtually promoted that it's actually created a legislative arbitrage. Yeah. That got snapped up pretty quickly. It only took them a month, but interesting. Anyway, that's just completely off topic, but I think we might explore that. So thesis time for all of you academics out there.
Yeah, I know you like to dive in deep into that stuff, mate. It gets your brain whirring. So, but yeah, listen, there's the ability for, you know, for the smart people, and also those who have the capacity for risk in real estate at the moment to trade through. I saw this last time just after the GFC. People were trading land in this situation and making 10, 15, 20 grand. Literally in days by assigning contracts or doing options or whatever. So it's interesting, but the market sort of, as soon as it finds out there's a gap there somewhere to be exploited, it gets filled in one way, shape, or form.
Which it's interesting because I mean, this is totally off the cuff. So if we don't get an answer, then that's totally cool. This one's coming towards you. Is that because there's only one of us, Jace, as we spoke about in previous sessions. Now there's only one of us in this room that actually has been alive and in mature times to be able to see the effects of property from a rising interest rate environment, and also post. Not quite old enough for the other ones. You might remember little parts of it, but post major shutdowns of borders and things of that nature as far as post-war conditions were concerned.
Well, not after the war. They didn't have that. But you're talking about Keating in '94. Yeah.
Well, that's a little bit later on. I do remember that. I think it was 2 years before I finished school.
That stopped the rising interest rates, which I think were at about 20%. And he didn't put the Reserve Bank rate up 0.4%. He put it up 4%. Bang. No one knew what to do. They said, no, that's wrong. 0.4, no, 4. It had never been put up that much. And this was the Banana Republic that...
I remember the term. Yeah.
And that put a stop to it. And then that created the low interest rate environment. And no one was going to borrow money at all because people had government bonds that suddenly became less valuable. Overnight, bang, their value was depreciated. People had what they thought were
capital guarantee.
Capital stable funds, which were invested in fixed interest. But if fixed interest has a term and the general rate of interest goes up, all of a sudden the capital value of that investment is depreciated, and they thought their money was guaranteed. Well, it wasn't. They finished the contract, but the capital value today went down because they could get a better interest rate elsewhere.
So how long did the effects of that play out?
Well, all through the 90s, no one was really going to borrow money. And that's why when the people eventually started to say, well, hang on, I can borrow more money than you're lending. And this then created the boom in real estate, which has gone on to this day. It's just gone. If we were looking, I think around early 2000s, if you had a house that was worth $500,000 in real value today you're paying $1 million real value for that same asset because interest rates have remained low. And how can they put the interest rates up without killing the economy? That's the problem.
Yeah,
So
they're kind of backed into a corner, aren't they?
Well, it's an I reckon it's an artificial situation. I'm not an economist, but eventually that's got to be sorted out. You've got to have normal interest rates around about 6%. If you can't get that without risk, then it forces everybody to take a risk to get a better return, and that's not. So all the pensioners who have money in capital in term deposits, all of their returns have just been reduced over that time.
Which is probably explains a lot of what's happened in market conditions, because if you look offshore, mate, I'm not sure if you've looked at the NASDAQ or the S&P 500 recently. It's above where it was when the COVID started, significantly.
Well, it's not my place. It's not my cup of tea. But mate, I did see it passing the other day, which things are back up there. I mean, what's your call on that? It just seems ludicrous.
It's hard to talk because Tony talked about the Banana Republic, which was Keating. Before them was Gough Whitlam. So Gough was, again, he did a similar thing in that he raised public servants' wages quite considerably, which had basically the same effect.
That created inflation. It started it all off.
But it annihilated the economy overnight. Like literally, it just blew it up. So there's two major events in history that the world, well, Australians, we know all too well, which if you were looking back and anybody said, well, let's raise interest rates aggressively to control people, we're not there yet, and we're not going to be there for a long time.
Yeah.
But the last time that happened in a reasonable economy, it just absolutely ground everything to a stop. So
it was funny though. I had a chat to a car dealer at the time, and I said, how can you exist with interest rates at 18, 20%? He said, oh, it's not a problem. He said, you have a floor plan, which costs so much. He said, but with inflation, 2 months later, the floor plan's worth $20,000 or $30,000 more. And he said, I just pay the interest and there's no problem. And that, I couldn't believe it.
Well,
it wasn't into buying cars. It was just someone I spoke to at the time.
Well, it was very similar after the GFC, when access to money was easy, 2010 and 11. Like access to finance was easy. The interest rates weren't so low, but access to finance was easy. Low doc loan or no doc loans. So, like you're saying, like we were all borrowing it. Like I borrowed from a company called Caesar Home Loans. They're not in existence today. Get this one. This would make you two like roll over in your sleep and have nightmares. They gave me a loan. They gave me a loan that I could capitalize half of my interest because they predicted capital growth would continue forever. Like on a just I could capitalize half of my interest and not have to pay it. They went broke, by the way, and I
think eventually it wouldn't have mattered. They would have. During the 80s, I was an insurance agent or working in superannuation, and we used to do quotes for people, and we would project the return. And of course, if you project any return at 15% compound interest for 25 to 30 years, you can imagine what the end result looked like. Yeah, and of course, this impressed people. Absolutely. You'd say, well, you put in $100 a week and you end up with $10 million a year. And of course, it was a fantasy, and it just could not continue. But this was accepted at the time.
Yeah.
In fact, I still remember one of the banks had our term deposit paid 16%. And I thought I really should get that ad and take it, because it'll be worth a lot of money in 20 years' time when I try and tell someone that that's what happened. But that's what happened back in that time in the 80s.
And then why would you take your money out of that, like, and put it somewhere else? Like there'd be no reason, right? I mean, or maybe there was the idea of that
equity markets started doing 35% at that point in time. So
the projection as an ongoing thing was a fantasy. It wasn't real. That was the problem. If you actually projected what it needed to be, in real returns, it had to be $100 million, not $10 million. But 10 million in today's values, oh, that sounds like a lot of money. And people were seriously doing this. I couldn't believe it. At the time, I knew it was ridiculous.
But it's also the factor of inflation. And I think that when we're now looking at markets and we're looking at property, we have to understand that we're potentially in a contractionary, inflationary position. Might need to take the top off that, buddy.
I've only had my first class too.
I was about to say, we've worked through lunch as well.
Your conversation was riveting. I couldn't take my eyes off you.
But the one thing that we need to take, because people get fixated on numbers, right? They get fixated on you're getting a 15% return. I used to get 15%. You used to get 15% with 7% inflation. So what's your real return?
Yeah.
Right? So just to cut it down for people who are watching who don't exactly understand, is that a cost of milk used to be 20p or 20 cents, right? Now it's $2.20. So your money is only as good as the products that it can buy with it, right? And that's called purchase power. And as that increases, that's positive inflation. If the cost of goods come down, that's negative inflation. So if we end up in a deflationary environment, just holding your money in cash means that you're making money, because your money actually can buy more and more every day. But what people don't understand when they're looking back over time is what is the real return? And when markets were inflationary and you were getting 35% in the share market, you were getting 15% in the property market, year in, year out, you were in periods of time where property,
35%?
Yeah. That was when,
year in, year out?
That was before the GFC, yeah. We remember, our psychology is small, is that if you have 3 years where you were getting in a growth fund, 27 to 35% year on year before the GFC, 3 years in a row, then that's an expectation. And I remember chatting with you about it at that point in time.
Well, I don't.
I do. If you look back,
I don't think I'd have ever expected 35% return year in, year out.
You were dealing with a number.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I remember something similar after the Olympics in Sydney. We were in, our office, our business started in Sydney, and literally from the Olympics in Sydney, Positive started in 2003, so we're not that old, but literally all we saw was this kind of, it was just like for 7 years or something. It was just like that. It was crazy. It was, and the idea was, don't worry about cash flow. Just borrow whatever, just take whatever loan they'll give you, buy whatever you can buy. It doesn't matter the quality, the location, nothing, because it all goes up. And then tap into the equity and you'll be right. And the old tide went out and we saw who was wearing pants in 2009, 2010. That's for sure. When that turned on. Sydney got affected the worst, but yeah.
Oh, that was commercial. And that's what's interesting about this time, is that commercial doesn't seem to be as hit throughout this one, but certainly commercial, because it was over leveraged, it just got flogged. Like instantaneously, everything became frozen.
Yeah, I mean, you and I have chatted about this last time. I think I actually don't think anyone's talking about it yet because they don't want to. I think the world of offices, the commercial, where the office commercial space, I think is yet to have. I think it's going to be absolutely poleaxed, so logistics, industrial is actually, in my research, actually has gone up in value. It's actually become more valuable because the world realized it can actually live at home and order stuff from home and on the internet. So that logistics, industrial, world,
very used to it now.
Yeah, like very good. It was strong. It's strong. But people having offices, and like I'm an example. Like I've cancelled 3 leases. I've just saved myself $500,000 a year in leases, and I'm never going back. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to take on a contingent liability of $2 to $3 million over a 5 to 10 year period for the business ever again. What does that look like? Well, right now, the legislation, or the rough legislation, code of conduct, has said to all commercial landlords, hey, listen, you've got to drop the rent 50% if someone's COVID affected. You can have a bit of a rest for the moment because the banks will look after you if you do that. But what happens when, and you were hedging towards this tonight for the discussion anyway, so might as well kick it off. What's going to happen when the government says, all right, the boxing gloves are off, gang? Because here's what I do know in commercial lending, not residential lending, you can be upside down in value and equity, and you make your payment, the bank doesn't care. Well, the bank might care, but they can't do anything about it, right? Residential has all sorts of protections. You can't kick people out in the street. But old mate who's got, a 300 square meter office as his investment, and he's got a mortgage on it of 70%, and his valuation was based on a cap rate, which is based on the income. All of a sudden, his income's 50% less, or even 30% less. Every single loan will be in breach of its terms and conditions, and every mortgage could be called in like that on a commercial term. No one's talking about that right now, and I'm, it may be too big. It may be way too big for the banks to do anything about it. But
do you remember when that happened?
Oh, absolutely.
So what happened last time when that went round?
Well, that's when I put my clients into the best investments they've ever had. It was a real estate property trust that no one wanted to buy. No one wanted to buy any real estate property trust, except this one was basically guaranteed, and the rent was guaranteed. It was let to a government institution, and it's earned 15% compound interest ever since I put people into it.
Hard to go into. That wasn't meant to be.
Not too many of them around, I might add.
That wasn't the expected answer. I wasn't going. I think Tony might be thinking about getting back into the game again. I think he's just giving himself a plug.
Is that the other ad?
I actually remember the time there was a fellow going, you couldn't actually sell a property trust at that stage. They were all closed. No one could sell out of them because they'd all go break if they did.
Yeah.
Fellow was going around offering to buy units so people could liquidate them, but he's paying 50% of the dollar, but they'd pay it because they needed the money. He knew eventually they'd come good, which they did, but this was just a one-off. The market was absolutely, no one wanted them, and this one was a live one. And it was government. The rent was government guaranteed. That's what made it work.
So this was when Centro went down. It's when
they all went down.
All the big Gold Coast firms, the ex-Sydney firms that went to the Gold Coast, they all went down.
Well,
that's
MFS.
Silver lining in every cloud. All right.
But I guess that.
I don't tell anyone I live on the Gold Coast that I'm in property. The moment you do, they're like, mate, get out of my car, get out of my house.
But I guess that wasn't the answer that I was expecting. The answer that was back in I think it was the early 80s when the banks actually went through this process before. And you can only look back at history because history is a good indicator of what may happen in the future. But it's a mimic, right? It doesn't repeat itself. It's a mimic.
Yeah.
But what the banks did, and it makes perfect sense, is in the commercial space, especially with small to medium businesses, and if you remember, back me up, they didn't let the bad businesses go. because what's the point in bankrupting a bad business? Because you get no dough.
Well,
So let's just keep them plodding along and take whatever rent and things that we can from them and whatever payments that we can, and we'll kick them down. The ones that were in the real danger zone were the ones that were right in the middle, that were reasonable business, reasonable cash flows. And if you're in that position as a business,
technical breach.
Yep, because they know they can get the money back, because they can get it off your mortgage.
So good business. Yeah, that's right. I remember good businesses were being put through the hoop because that was the only place they could get money.
Yeah.
They also went through a phase where they didn't discharge mortgages when the mortgages were discharged.
Have you heard this?
They did not. They'd leave it on the books. They would not put the paperwork in, so that when they reported to the Reserve Bank, all of us, oh, here's our mortgage book over here. Of course, the mortgage had been discharged. The papers should have been lodged, but they weren't. And people 10 years down the track found they still had a mortgage on their property when it was supposed to have been discharged. And that was purely a statistical thing with the Reserve Bank. Yeah, one bank was broke, absolutely broke and insolvent. And my information tells me that he...
Allegedly.
I'm not saying who or where. The
Bank of Adelaide didn't Adelaide go broke?
It's not naming the bank, but was reporting to the Executive Council at the time on their situation from week to week.
Wow.
And that it was a very, you don't have a mortgage in that time. If it had a reasonable amount of money, but you're in breach, you're oof.
So I guess the principle of it is, if you're a business owner of commercial assets and you've got reasonable amounts of leverage, probably not a bad thing to look at your position and make sure that you're not upside down. If you're skimming on the bones of your arse, you're probably safe. If you're doing quite well and you feel comfortable, that's probably the hitting zone where you should be just making sure that your LVRs are up to scratch, because likely if they come looking, and there's no guarantee that they will, but if they come looking, that's where you want to make sure that you're not left wanting. So you might want to just have a look at the loan documents.
Have a look, mate. I mean, we did that conversation with Dermot not so long ago. Like, I mean, you and I have chatted about this. You know, I got a bit of a whipping in the GFC. You know, with very poor structuring and very poor experience after 7 years of everything always going up and thinking the world would always reward me for risk. But, you know, sometimes it doesn't reward you for risk. But, you know, if you're not structured properly, you know, like we said the other week with Dermot, this is a golden opportunity for you to restructure yourself under the safe harboring laws right now. You know, if you've gotten yourself into a bit of a pickle, and if you can make sure you get your head around it, there's an opportunity for, you know, restructuring in a way that, you know, can make sure that you don't end up poleaxing yourself, you know, in a way.
This isn't a plug, but mate, and no names, no companies, no details. But this week, I reckon I might have put somebody into that situation whereby they're struggling in COVID time. Gave me a brief synopsis of their situation, and I'll report back to you in 6 weeks' time, because that's roughly how long the process takes. But I reckon, and small to medium business, just like, well, smaller than yours, but bigger than mine, and I think 400,000-500,000 is going to be the potential difference of being able to utilise those safe harbour laws. So what that is leases without guarantees, which could still be negotiated, tax debt, and what was the other one? Unsecured high interest company loans. And they had no idea, absolutely no idea. It was the mentality was, let's just make it work, which is great, but had no idea that these sorts of things are there to be able to help them. And geez, I tell you what, they should put that. They should put that on one of the PM's announcements. But it's a pretty extreme measure. And
at the end of the day, Andy, you and I have chatted about this. Being an entrepreneur and starting a business, it's an extreme sport. Like it is full contact. Like no one's taken any prisoners. You do your best. One day you wake up and you go, I'd love to work for myself, and then all of a sudden you end up employing some people and doing some things and whatever. And then you think, I'd like more freedom and more profit. And like, how's that working out for you? But however you end up there, for most people, it's a genuine issue. You're down a dark alley, you back yourself into a corner, and you go, how the hell did I end up here? And for those people, these laws are very important. Because no one set out to do anything wrong. You're just in a really average spot, and it shouldn't. That thing shouldn't be. That's all she wrote. Like that's that's why I love living in Australia. Yeah. You should. There should be protections in making mistakes. Valid ones. Anyway, yeah, one day we could wax lyrical about this one because, mate,
mate, I'm there with you. I had the conversation again. Look, I had this conversation probably once every 2 days, and I'm as passionate about it after the one, and Tony can vouch for it as well. You can vouch for it. It's nobody teaches you to be a business owner. You generally, there's very few business owners, and you and I had this conversation. We were talking about a friend of ours who we actually go, yeah, that's a business owner, who has no skill whatsoever in the area that he buys and builds businesses. And that's a business owner. The rest of us, have a passion about something that we get involved in. We love it and we have a craft, and then we go and we start to scale that craft to help more people. And the byproduct of that is we have team, we have taxes, we have numbers, we have all of these things, none of which we've been taught how to control. And you just learn by the punches. And so the realization that I came to yesterday was that's the reason why the percentage of businesses that survive, 10 or 15 years is 1% of all businesses that start.
Yeah.
Is because any one of those right hooks could be a knockout blow. It just depends on luck and potentially a few people that you might have around you who can protect you.
Yeah.
So it is a full contact sport. It's an extreme sport. And so another ad from our sponsors that we have a little bit
talking about extreme sport.
It's all about extreme sport. Take a look at this. This is what you can do.
Maybe that's not you.
Now, I know what you're thinking, Jace. I know you're thinking, was that you, Andy?
Well, I was going to say, is that you, Andy? And was that the Gold Coast? It looked like the Gold Coast.
Mate, that was actually St Kilda down here in sunny Melbourne. The reason why it was in black and white is because it was probably cloudy, right? But that's actually a world champion, actually, more recently, a good mate of ours, Ewan Jasper, who's a St Kilda boy, and won one of the world titles more recently, and part of the team down there. But it's bloody amazing, isn't it? It's amazing what you can do in Melbourne.
You change the ground.
It's a windy for sure.
So, mate, you had a few questions to answer on your side, or?
Well, I did have one question about mortgage pauses, and we chatted this about a long time ago. Long time ago. Feels like a long time ago, like COVID. It feels been full on, but
that was so yesterday.
But I had one question about mortgage pausing. The idea that if you're affected, your income is affected, either your rental property is affected, your personal income is affected. The banks are saying, which has been amazing. Hey, listen, shout out, we'll pause your mortgage for 6 months. Doesn't mean it's free money. It gets added on to the end. It gets capitalized and you've got to pay it back later. But some people are sort of saying, hey, listen, if I pause a mortgage, then, does that affect my credit rating or my ability to apply for another loan? I'll answer that in two ways, or in two sections. Number one, it doesn't affect your credit rating. That's been legislated. The government has said any mortgage pause for any loan for anybody is not to show up on a credit history in the COVID times. Now, I'm not quite sure how they're going to manage that. I'm not, but we'll see how that works. I think there'll be some automatic. I think there'll be some automatic reporting go on, and there'll be a lot of sort of, people trying to sort of backfill that one. But technically, that's meant to happen. Practically, I think the banks and also many other systems will probably automatically do that quite easily, and there'll be a bit of work to undo it.
Well, it's probably a good thought for the future, though, because if you are thinking about that in the future, you may get rejected, but it may be one of those points where you go, hang on, go back and check your beta score and find out what the real deal really is.
Yeah. And you bring up a good point, Andy, and for my property investors, we've been encouraging people to pay for and regularly receive a Veda credit check every month for over 15 years. It's unbelievable how many things can happen without your understanding and notification. Like So I'll give you an example. As a business owner, I had one of my operational managers, get us some printers for an office. There's nothing wrong with that, right? However, they signed an agreement to rent these printers, but I was the director of the business, and that showed up as a hit of my credit rating. And thankfully I saw it, and then I went back to that company and said, no, that's not going to happen. Those sorts of things. So it's really interesting in this space. Credit ratings are pretty important, but yeah. So technically, it's not meant to happen. I don't think practically it'll be perfect. So for those who are listening in, you're going to have to work hard to make sure that doesn't affect your ability to borrow. On the flip side, if you want to borrow some more money, you've paused one mortgage, but you're saying, hey, I'd like to borrow some other money, then you're not going to be able to borrow money with that same lender. Right now, at this point in time, if you pause your mortgage with CBA, technically you still can apply for a loan with Westpac. That's a funny one right now. Sometimes living in the grey zone is part of, being an entrepreneur. And
can you imagine the conversation? So how did you pass servicing? Oh, I've put the other loan on hold. I don't have to pay that for another 6 months. Oh, okay, fair enough. Let's sign you up.
We're good. But yeah, it's interesting. We've had people on JobKeeper qualifying for loans right now. The banks are saying, yep, as long as the employer is giving a letter saying as soon as we're allowed to, this person's going to come back to full-time employment. It's a funny old world, the finance world. It changes every day, like literally every day. I'm not kidding you. My the finance team are just like they're poking their eyes out with sharp sticks every other moment. But but there you go.
And this is the thing. It's I'm not sure if you feel the same way, mate, but I'm almost now feeling like we're talking about the same thing every week, but we're talking about slight variations of it. And but the thing is that what we know is that not everybody knows it yet. And I guess for the financial professionals out there or everybody else, like just please don't expect that you actually know all of this shit yet, because we're constantly learning. If it's not what it is, it's how it's going to affect us.
Yeah.
And if there's just so much coming out at the moment, and that's why she's still coming in and watching these things. I'm surprised there's not more shares, to be honest. But that's up to you. You don't have to share the knowledge. You can keep it for yourself. But I think it would be wise to share. Something I'd like to share with most of you. I haven't seen documentation about it yet, so it is a Chinese whisper. But the instant asset write-off going into rolling over till December 2020. That's the year that we're in, isn't it? So I haven't seen it, so I can't promise you that that's the case. So if anybody has, but as soon as I do, I'll post it under this video, and then you can share that as well.
That's good news, Andy. What about? I'm thinking of buying some more video gear.
Well, our old gear's obsolete already. But what a lot of people have been struggling with, and various businesses may be in this place, is there's no stock left. There's no stock left in almost any industry that's still going. Stocks, like it's like I used your comment today and I got 0 laughs, right? I used your comment and I said it's as rare as rocking horse shit, and nobody laughed. But when you did it, I pissed myself laughing. But camera gear is as rare as hen's teeth. Earth moving equipment is as rare as hen's teeth. So what this does is it actually gives you the possibility of being able to write that off in next year. So look, I can't give you, because I haven't had the time to look through and find the button that says, yes, this is legislated, and this is the case. And we'll bring some tax experts on soon to do, post end of financial year. But if you are thinking about doing that and the business is still going good and you've still got, or in tax planning, if you've got a way of deferring some invoices or deferring tax until next year, maybe that's something that you should be thinking about doing. I think that's really, really key. And you need to be getting that in the psyche. Do I delay invoices? Do I delay renovations? Do I buy it next year because you thought you weren't going to get it? It was going to go back to 1,000, but it looks like it's going to stay up at 150. But if it holds true to what was, and this is the thing, it's the landscape. It's like walking on quicksand at the moment. It was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, it was going from 150 down to 1,000. And now it's maybe 150 with 150,000 into the future. So, be really, really wary of that. And, mates, that probably covers off on my parts for today, unless you want to do a quick, unless you've got anything else, and then maybe want to do a quick fire questionnaire to the experience in the room.
Yeah, no, let's do it. Like just a couple of quick things for me. The boosts got added to around the country. So Western Australia, on top of the $25,000 boost, Western Australia said, yeah, we'll chuck another 20 grand in. So not only did they already have a first homeowners grant, but Western Australia put another $20,000 on. So technically, if you're in Western Australia, you can get $55,000 cash from different, and the federal government said that extend the LMI grant as well. So technically, I did it the other day. You could be a first home buyer, borrow at 95%, no LMI cost, and put $15,000 of cash in your pocket and own your own first home. How ludicrous is that? It's cool.
I just heard on the grapevine as well. Again, can't ratify it. Allegedly, right? Allegedly, the same thing's happening in the Northern Territory. So for new builds, 50 grand. So a little bit of a. Just the client of mine up there is looking at actually doing some development work as a result of it. So some significant opportunities.
Mate, Queensland chucked an extra 5 grand in. They went a bit light, I think, and Regional in Victoria, regional Victoria and Tasmania said they'd match, or they'd up their first home buyers to 20. So yeah, I think it's like the 6-minute abs. You and I have talked about this before. Everyone's going to come to the party and try 5-minute abs or 4-minute abs, but you know,
one COVID keg, right? If you want that, then I've got the recipe.
It'll be very interesting, mate. Yeah. So, mate, let's do it. Let's do some, fast and furious to the experience in the room.
All right, mate. Well, let's tag team. What have you got in mind? If there were three, so let's do it slow and furious. If there were three things that you would go back and compare with, let's say 60s to now, what would those questions be over that point in time?
But my one would be in and around the ease of finance. So in my very limited experience, you used to have to go in with a tie and a suit and beg for a loan, 40 years ago, and now you don't even have to go anywhere. You can sort of on your phone apply for something and get a loan. Like in your experience, what has been that kind of maybe the
change in finance?
The biggest changes for you that you've seen?
Well, they didn't have 90% loans in those days. You had to have a reasonable deposit. But then again, my first house, I had a bank loan, the first mortgage, and a bank overdraft. That's what got me into my first home, and then it doubled in value in 2 years. So I was quite happy after that. Although I thought the white ants were going to eat into it and it would get to be worthless. But,
so how much was the first home?
$24,000.
Whereabouts was it?
Oh, sorry, $12,000.
12,000. Where was it?
It came in Oliver's Hill in French.
What was the average income back then?
When I first started in the early 60s, at 63.4, it was £1,200. And that was a reasonable income.
£1,200. So the average property was 23 times, roughly, 23 times your...
Well, it was 12. It was 12.
Oh, 12,000. So 10 times.
That was a few years later. And you had to have a reasonable deposit. This business of 90% loans and insured loans didn't exist. Bank managers actually were people that you did go to see and they would help you, whereas now they are simply administrators of head office policy. And it's all automatic. And in fact, they don't do the loans now anyway.
No, they don't.
In other words, I think he's saying you can't pull the wool over the bank manager's eyes by being a good bloke anymore.
Well, they've ceased to provide the service they provided in those days. So it's a bit like the old lady going up and wanting to talk to a teller, and all there's an ATM out the front. ATMs didn't exist, of course. You did all your banking with a teller, and that's it. It was not as easy to get finance then as it is today. It's automatic. You go boom, boom, boom. There's the thing. You've got almost 24-hour approval.
So I've got a question. Two questions in the one, unless you've got another one, mate.
No, you shoot.
If you could go back in a time machine and tell your 16-year-old self one thing, one sentence, what would that sentence be?
Am I allowed to say it?
But you might only get a negative from Margot in this one. She's the only one.
I don't believe anything anyone's ever told you.
No, if there was one thing you could tell your younger self, what would it be?
Well, I just told you. Don't believe anything anyone says to you.
Apple's a shit stock. I'm all in. I'm all in.
And the taxi driver can't give you a good tip, all right?
So,
well, it's, yeah, okay. No, well, we'd have to think about that.
all right. Well, you got no time, so that was your answer.
Right.
It was a bit of a shit answer, but that's all right. So, given everything that's happened, and given you've seen wars, not frontline, but you've seen wars. You've seen Iraq. You've seen .com. You've seen Black Wednesday, Black Monday, the 83, which is the 80s crash. Through all of that, and now we sit here in an investment world. What would be the one thing that you would say? Not advice, but what would be the one thing that you would, a principle, if you will, that you would take moving forward?
Regarding what?
Not just regarding investing, investment, and wealth creation.
I think, personally, I think the one thing that anyone should always have is a portfolio of blue chip shares. And if you hold that, it will go up, it will go down, but it will, over time, it will serve you better than basically any other investment.
Mention real estate.
Well, I was going to give a little, but the trouble is real estate is a little harder to get into. A real estate investment is a 10-year investment minimum.
Yeah, well, I got that, but what I just heard was it was 10 times your average salary back in the 60s, and I'd say it's almost less than that now. No. You $12,000 and 12,000.
Back in the 60s, interest rates were 6%, and you could borrow 5 times your salary. Now you can borrow 10 times your salary, and that's a big difference.
I reckon we're going to have to crunch some numbers on that one, Jace, and actually do a bit of a comparison and find out the difference in the trajectory. I reckon that'll be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, literally of late, it's been less capacity for borrowing, but really probably, take the last 2 years off. That's exactly what it was. The capacity for borrowing was like insane compared to your salary. But I think they've...
And you could borrow up to 25% of the breadwinner's salary. And of course, a lot of wives did not work then. So the society has now got used to more than one income to be able to buy the washing machines and all the white goods and everything that goes with owning a house. And now the income is taken more over 2 people rather than just the one. Whereas then it was one breadwinner.
True, isn't it? Yeah.
Well, mate, thanks for coming on. So just a few quick questions before you disappear. So get ready for them. We've got to be quick on these ones. So red or white wine?
Red.
Geelong or Hawthorn? Why?
They're the Cats, right?
Stocks or property?
Well, I've already told you stocks, I suppose.
I think the answer is both. What's the one thing you most love in life?
I suppose at the moment golf, but I can't play it. So.
Who was the one thing you love more than anything else in life? Who was the one person you love more than anything in life?
My wife. How can I say anything else?
Well, there's 3 children. So which one was your favourite child?
You're looking for some endorsement there, Andy.
No, these are invalid questions.
and favourite scotch, so I can get you something for joining us tonight.
Balvenie.
Balvenie. Oh, he's gone from Talisker to Balvenie. That's disappointing.
I am Talisker.
Mates, I reckon we're going to have to do some number crunching based on some of our things today. You've said that there were days where we didn't have 30% returns, and you've given us the conversation on yields on property. And mate, I reckon it's a really good little mathematical equation to do. Let's figure out relatively where we sit now as opposed to back then. I think it'd be really, really interesting, because we all look at charts that go like that. We all look at different dynamics, but at the end of the day, it's how much money is sitting in your pocket, how much you've got to spend, and the value of what you're spending it on. And if it costs $1 and you're earning 10, it's the same as it costing $100 and you're earning 1,000, 100.
One comment. In the early 60s, we didn't have inflation. Mortgages were fixed for 25 years.
Yeah, right.
Interest rate for 25 years.
We were talking about that today, Andy.
Bring them back.
Variable mortgages were a tweak a few years later.
Mm.
They were fixed. All mortgages were fixed in the early 60s.
Maybe that's what the government should do. Fix its mortgage rate now for 25 years.
Listen, I'm a big fan of people who have their home. It should be a fixed rate that they can rely on for 25 years, and they can plan their life around it. I actually think that, you and I have had this chat about, pricing risk for lending, so many times. And, as a property investor, if you're going to take some more risks, well, you should pay some more money. That's the way I see it. But as a homeowner, it should be, hey, listen, everyone needs a home, and they should be able to, budget that into their life. That's the way I see it, But, I don't know if you and I get to call these shots. But
you never know. But I reckon if we throw enough rods in, we might catch a fish at some point in time. But my opinion, mate, I think that we will go to a risk pricing model regardless. I honestly think that it may not be 5, it may be 10 years, but it just has to go that way. And the fact that it's not there already, I'm amazed by it, because whenever you manage risk, which is a conversation I had today with somebody as well, and they'll probably be watching this. Whenever you are looking at risk, you quantify what that means to you, and then you create what's known as a PRAT factor, which is in regression analysis. It's effectively the amount of risk you're going to take, and then you create a regression analysis as to what reward you need in order to quantify that risk. And I guess that's for the statisticians going out there, they're going, yeah, this is great. But basically all that means is when you dial up risk, you need to dial up more return. And it's a matter of trying to figure out what that right balance is. And right now, what we're seeing in markets is absolutely an example of that in property, and property has slower cycles, slower price fluctuations than what equity markets do. Equity markets are like that crazy girlfriend. That's probably bad. I shouldn't have said that. That crazy friend. That crazy friend.
Well, we can talk about that maybe next week, mate. The ability for real estate to liquidate compared to shares liquidate. Completely different profiles, and the fair weather friend of both markets. I think can have an adverse effect on our world. So, yeah.
I think that and the two worlds play so well together. Do you mind if I put it's 1 minute 37 seconds? Have you got 1 minute 37 seconds?
Absolutely.
This is another word from our wonderful business friends and
of our show. Yeah, all right, go.
One great thing is great culture, great people, great fun, and getting back into nature. And this is something that shows all of those things.
Nice.
mate, yesterday, stand it down with that. Absolutely awesome. Thank you for those that helped, those that took photos, everyone voting on this hero. It's made it an awesome day. See you on the water soon. Have a great holiday season.
And mate, with that, it's the reason why we chose to do it is to support those businesses around us. So if you're in business and you're out there and you've got other businesses that you should be supporting, in periods of time like now, there's no better time than to work together and help each other out. We'd love to see more of it, and if we can help you out in any way, shape or form, please let us know. Share the information. Let us know the questions that you've got so that we can help you more.
Awesome, mate. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Great to see you. Great to meet you, Tony. Andy.
Yes, likewise, Jason.
Have a great rest of your evening, and hopefully one day in person we'll be able to catch up.
By the fire, mate. By the fire.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, gang. Thanks,
See you, everyone.